I'm Dr. Devashi Chakravarti, and I'm presenting a lecture in Chapter 3, The Wonder That Was India, written by A.L. Basham. This chapter particularly deals with the beauty and greatness of Indian civilization and culture that has influenced the entire world. So let's go through the chapter briefly. The chapter begins by telling us the most important characteristic of Indian civilization being its ability to retain its continuity. Though we are attracted towards the technological advancements of the West, yet the beauty and wisdom of Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads still inspire us. The stories of the Ramayana and Mahabharata still hold our attention. Like every other culture, Indian culture also had some aspects that were good and some aspects that were bad or negative. These bad aspects have largely been removed. For instance, hecatombs of Vedic age, animal sacrifice, sati, child marriage, caste system, they have perished to a large extent. The traditional Indian society has changed and adapted itself to modern times. But one thing still continues to remain the same, and that is the cultural tradition of India. Looking back, we can see how Indian culture has influenced the entire world since the ages. In Southeast Asia, for instance, we find that people from Western India settled in Ceylon, present day Sri Lanka, as early as 5th century BC. Indian merchants went and settled in countries as far as Malay and Sumatra. The the cultural influence of India increased to certain extent in this region that Sanskrit became the official language, and we can still see the evidence of the influence of Indian culture on these countries, particularly in the heritage sites of these countries, like for instance the Buddhist stupas in Java or the Shaivite temple in Cambodia. There were other influences also, but Indian cultural influence was the greatest in this region. So much so that some Indian historians refer to this region as the Greater India or the Indian colonies. But here we must remember that these colonies were not won over by the might of the sword. They were peaceful ones, and mostly they can be referred to as colonies because they became Indianized due to the influence of Indian culture. There is only one exception, and that is the legendary story of Vijaya, the Aryan conqueror, who is said to have conquered Ceylon. Moving towards the north of India, we find that India and China had very little link till about some 2000 years ago when India and China finally met during the rule of the Han Empire. China was not much influenced by Indian culture, but China or other countries of the Far East like Japan, Korea, and Tibet cannot deny the indebtedness to India for Buddhism. There were some practical blessings also that India gave to the world, like, for instance, rice, cotton, sugarcane, spices, domestic fowl, game of chess, and the decimal system. So, in every aspect of life, India gave certain things to the world. The influence of India was always there. Spiritually, too, India had a great influence on the West. And this influence can be seen in the similarities of the practices of some religious groups in West and India. The Jewish sect of Essence, for instance, has monastic practices that are very similar to Buddhism. Some passages of New Testament have similarities with Pali scriptures. Teachings of Western philosophers like Pythagoras have similarities to the Upanishads. Influence of in Indian mystics was very much there during the 19th century also. We find Europe and America look towards India to find inspiration in the teachings of such mystics like Paramhans Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekanand and others. The most important influence of an Indian on the Western mind was that of Mahatma Gandhi and his philosophy of nonviolence. Writers, thinkers of the West were all influenced by India, its culture, and ancient literature. Goethe, for instance, took the help of Indian dramaturgy, the theory of drama, Natya Shastra, for his prologue to the Faust. German philosophers like Schopenhauer admitted the influence of Buddhism. Fichte and Hegel owed their work to the influence of the Upanishad. Every school of thought, every philosophy that we find in the West have some kind of an influence of Indian culture upon them. The wisdom, the knowledge that the great Indian sages found sitting in meditation on the banks of the Ganges. That same thought, that same knowledge inspired the entire world. In the modern times, when distances are getting shorter and different corners of the world are coming closer together, perhaps if an agreement is reached, we might find a single world culture in the future. But even then, India's contribution to that single world culture will be immense. And that is the reason why we need to know, why we need to be aware of the greatness and beauty of this Indian culture. And with this, we come to the end of the third chapter. Moving over to the exercises section, we see that the questions have been divided into two sections. The first section of question has 15 questions in it, which you have to answer in one or two sentences. While the second section of questions have 5 questions that you have to answer in 5 to 10 sentences. Every answer that you find for the questions given are from the lesson itself. So a reading of the lesson is a must if you have to answer the questions. I have given briefly a few of the answers that you can go through. Like, for instance, the first question: what is the most significant quality of Indian civilization? The answer to this question is in the first paragraph of the lesson. The most significant quality of Indian civilization is its ability to retain its continuity. As you can see in the answers, I have marked a portion of the answer in red color. And that is because when you are writing an answer, you can take the help of the question. Almost half of the answer that you're writing comes from the question itself. Only the particular thing that has been asked, you can get it from the lesson. In the same way, you can answer the other questions also. I have given about 5 answers in the lecture that you can find help from. The second question, and in the next slide, you will find the other 3, that is question number 3, 4, and 5. All the answers are from the lesson. If you go through the lesson, you will find the answers, and you can take the help of the question to begin your answer with. In the next slide, you will find questions from the second section, which are longer in length. The first question being, which aspects of ancient Indian culture are useless according to the author? In this answer, you have to give the list of the useless aspects of Indian culture, like the hecatombs of Vedic age, etc., and how they have been largely removed. The second question is also from the lesson, and it deals with the ways in which Southeast Asia was indebted, and basically it was for Buddhism. The answer is Buddhism. But you can expand it and tell about the other cultural influences and how Indian influence was the most important one. Similarly, I have also answered the third question for you here about the spiritual influence of India on the West. As you can see, and as I have been telling you again and again, all the answers are from the lesson. And if you go through the lesson, you'll find the answers in it. As far as study material of this chapter is concerned, I will be uploading the study material shortly on the site, and you can find all the answers of the questions as well as the exercises in it. In the next part of my lecture, I will be continuing with the exercises, especially the vocabulary and the grammar section.